So we are now proceeding into the next one, that is value of supply. What is this value of supply? Section 15, only one section we have that deals with value of supply. Section 15 and read with CGST rules. So section 15 says, section 15 subsection 1 says, whatever is the transaction value, that is the price paid or payable or price involved in the transaction, will be taken as a value of supply, provided two conditions are satisfied. Supplier and recipient are not related. Price is the sole consideration for sale. So these two conditions should be satisfied. So what is that we are discussing? Value of supply. Value of supply equal to transaction value. What is transaction value? Price paid or payable, provided two conditions are satisfied. What are the two conditions? Price must be the sole consideration. Buyer and seller are not related. If these two conditions are satisfied, then in that case, we will be taking transaction value, that is price involved in the transaction. If any of these two conditions or both the conditions not satisfied, then the value will be determined in terms of CGST rules. This is what subsection 1 says, 15 subsection 1 says. So therefore, whenever there is a supply of goods or service or both, the payment that is made for the supply will be taken as the transaction value. And there are certain inclusions in the transaction value. Section 15 subsection 2 deals with inclusions. In that section 15 subsection 2 clause A, total 5 inclusions are there. In that, first inclusion is any taxes, duties and cess by whatever name called will be included in the GST. Be included in the value for computing GST. So therefore, first we need to take all taxes, duties, etc. We need to add it to the value, and then on that we need to compute the GST payable. Okay, all taxes, duties and cess by whatever name called other than GST should be included. So for example, whenever we go to a movie theater, so there will be price of the ticket. On the price of the ticket we need to add entertainment tax. After adding entertainment tax, we need to compute GST. Same way on import of goods, there will be some value. On that value we need to pay customs duty, add customs duty, and the top of that we need to calculate GST. While computing GST, customs duty should be included. Okay, that's only because of 15(2)(a), and only if it is charged to the customer, otherwise it will not be included. Only if it is charged to customer, it will be included in the value. If it is not charged to customer, it will not be included in the value. 15(2)(a) is over. Then 15(2)(b), that is any amount that the supplier is liable to pay. Supplier is liable to pay some amount to any person, which is paid by the recipient, should be included in the value. It is supplier's liability met by the recipient, that should be included in the value, that is 15(2)(b). 15(2)(c), any expenditure incurred by the supplier and recovered from the recipient, reimbursement expenses. 15(2)(c), any expenditure incurred by the supplier and recovered from the recipient will be included in the value. And in this regard, we need to know one thing, that if the expenditure is incurred by supplier as a pure agent of the recipient, when supplier will be acting as a pure agent of recipient, actually that liability should be paid by the recipient, but supplier is paying it and recovering it from the recipient. So there are 3 points. It is a liability of the recipient. Number 2, incurred by supplier. And number 3, recovered from recipient as a pure agent. 3 points. It is a liability of the recipient. Number 2, incurred by supplier. Number 3, recovered from recipient as a pure agent. In that case, that is expenditure incurred as a pure agent. When a person will become a pure agent, so there are certain conditions for pure agent. Number 1, recipient should authorize the supplier to act as a pure agent through an agreement. So there should be an agreement. And number 2, supplier should recover only the actual amount incurred. So 10,000 rupees incurred, 10,000 only should be recovered. Recovers only the actual amount incurred. And supplier should not hold the title to the goods or services so procured, which means that, so whatever is the expenditure that is incurred, for incurring that expenditure, the invoice should not be in the name of supplier, should not hold title of goods or services. And those expenses, whatever he has incurred, should not be used for his personal purpose, not for his personal purpose. So these 4 conditions satisfied, then he will be called as a pure agent. What are the 4 conditions? Agreement should be there. Number 2, that actual amount incurred should be recovered. Number 3, title is not in the name of the supplier. Number 4, not used for personal purpose. Then if any one point is not satisfied, then he is not a pure agent. If he is not a pure agent, then the expenditure incurred by the supplier from and recovered from the recipient will not be excluded from the value, it will be included in the value. If it is a pure agent expenditure, it will be excluded from the value. That is given in rule 33. So that we need to know. So supplier incurs an expenditure and recovers from the recipient. So it is, if it is in the course of supply, it will be included in the value. If it is as a pure agent on behalf of the recipient, it will be excluded from the value. And recipient incurs the expenditure. Recipient incurs the expenditure on his own behalf will not come. When recipient is incurring an expenditure on behalf of supplier, means it is a supplier liability which is met by the recipient. Definitely it will be included in the value. Clear or not? Next. So therefore 15.2a, 15.2b, 15.2c read with rule 33 we have seen. Now 15.2d boss. What is that 15.2d? 15.2d says that interest or late fee or for delayed payment of consideration should be included in the value. Interest or late fee for delayed payment should be included in the value. What is that? That is, say for example, I have given some, I need to get some consideration. That consideration is not paid on time. So therefore I am collecting an interest. That interest for delay in payment of consideration, it need not be called as interest. Interest or late fee or penalty or any other consideration for delay in payment of consideration should be included in the value. Okay. That is 15.2d. 15.2a taxes, 15.2b supplier liability met by recipient, 15.2c supplier recovering the expenses from the recipient, and 15.2d interest for delay in payment. Then 15.2e is related to subsidies. This subsidies 15.2e, section 15 subsection 2 clause e, subsidy received by the supplier. So subsidy is divided into two, from CGRSG or from others. If it is from CGRSG, such subsidy shall be excluded from the value. If it is from central government or state government, because we already discussed that in consideration definition, consideration excludes subsidy from CGRSG, and other subsidy, others, from others. Is it directly linked to the price? What is the meaning of directly linked to the price? Means subsidy is received with respect to every product sold or every service rendered. For example, I am selling one product, and for every product sold I am getting 2000 rupees subsidy from, say, holding company or some other charitable institution. So this will be coming under directly linked to the price linked subsidy. So price linked subsidy means what? A subsidy is with respect to every product sold or every service rendered. And general subsidy means that we receive some ad hoc amount that is not connected to sales. That is known as general subsidy. Interest for delay, how do we know at the time of valuation or invoicing? So we will not know at the time of valuation or invoicing how much is the interest that we will be recovering. So therefore invoice normally we will raise, and thereafter we will be giving a debit note and recovering the interest separately. But why it is called as included in value? Because when we raise a debit note, at what rate we need to charge GST on that interest? So we need to pay GST on the interest related to the supply. So for example, if the supply is taxable at 12%, then interest for non-receipt of that consideration will also be taxable at 12%. So we need to give a debit note and recover the interest at a later point of time. That is that. Okay. Then rule 33, pure agent. I will give you one example related to that. Say for example, customs house agent you take. Customs house agent responsibility is to clear the customs goods, like imported goods from the customs area, and hand it over to the importer. That is only legal formalities he should complete. But he is not responsible for transportation of the goods or payment of customs duty, etc. So now importer asks him to pay the customs duty and recover from him. So customs duty is actually payable by the importer. But who pays? It is paid by the customs house agent. So he is acting as a pure agent. Another example is that, say you are a chartered accountant and income tax return you need to file. You are preparing the income tax return. Income tax is not payable by you. Income tax is payable by your client. But your client is requesting you to pay the income tax. Now you are paying the income tax and recovering that income tax from him. So is it only in case of statutory levies? Need not be. Another example is that, say the same customs house agent is incurring the transportation expenses. Transportation expenses, that is transportation of goods from port or airport to importer's place, is not the job of the customs house agent. It is the job of the importer. So importer has to incur that, but it is incurred by the customs house agent, and customs house agent incurs the transportation cost and recovers from the importer of goods. So in that case also, customs house agent is acting as a pure agent of the recipient. So like this, any number of examples we can take for the purpose of rule 33. Now, this subsidy point, I am coming back. Subsidy directly linked to the price. What does it mean? So with respect to every product sold or every service rendered, we get the subsidy that is known as directly linked to the price. And this subsidy should be included in the value. Suppose if it is a general subsidy means what? General subsidy means no way connected to sale of the goods, and this subsidy will not be included in the value. Does it mean that we don't have to pay any GST? No, this will be treated as consideration. So this general subsidy will be treated like donations. Okay, treated like donations. So donations, what is the point? Donations, what is the treatment? Conditional donation, include in the supply. Unconditional donation, exclude from supply. Correct or not? So like that. Treat it like a donation. You got a subsidy. Why you got a subsidy? For making any supply of goods, you got the subsidy. For making any service, you got the subsidy. Then conditional donation. Treat it as chargeable to GST. Include it under supply and pay GST. Separate supply. This is no way connected to the supply of goods. That will be separate supply, separate transaction. Suppose if you receive the general subsidy, and do you have any obligation to supply anything? No. It is purely charitable. You got some ad hoc amount. Unconditional donation, you are not required to pay any GST. So just treat it like donation. Treated like donations. Okay. Directly linked to the price means subsidy with respect to every product sold or service rendered. Every product sold or service rendered is known as directly linked to the price. Now, generally related to subsidies, we will be getting confused with respect to valuation. So don't get confused with respect to the valuation. The valuation will be very, very simple. So what we need to understand with respect to the valuation is that, so if the question is given, so in that question, whether price the price is after considering subsidy or before considering subsidy is something which we generally get confused in the exam. So we need to take two views. So view 1 is price after considering subsidy. Price after considering subsidy. This is view 1. Price after considering subsidy is view 1. And view 2 is price before considering subsidy. Price without considering subsidy. So when we consider subsidy, what will happen? So when we consider subsidy is an income to us. So to that extent, it will come down from the price. Okay. So price after considering subsidy, price without considering subsidy means subsidy is already deducted. Subsidy is deducted from the given price. Subsidy is deducted from given price. That is the assumption. Okay, that is view 1. Whereas view 2 is that view 1, view 2. View 2 is price without considering subsidy. What does it mean? Subsidy is not deducted. Subsidy is not deducted from given price. So that is the second assumption. So now when the question is silent only, we need to take these two assumptions. Suppose if the question has clearly given one view, we will take that view only. When the question is silent only, two assumptions are there. And for example, if the price is given, and that price is say rupees 40,000, we will take that 40,000. Now say first point, subsidy from SG. Subsidy from SG, what is the provision? To be included or to be excluded, we need to know. Subsidy from SG to be excluded. In the given price, it is already excluded, so ignore. Whereas in the second view, if you take the second view that the subsidy is not deducted, now you need to deduct, say 2,000 rupees, you need to deduct. And next point, subsidy from NGO. So subsidy from NGO is to be included. But if you take view 1, in the given price it is already excluded. So we need to include, we need to add, say 3,000 rupees, we will add. Whereas in the second case, it is to be included and it is already included. So ignore. It is to be included and it is already included. So therefore, we don't have to take anything in this case. And now the value will differ. Definitely the value will differ. So this will be taken as the value of supply. The value of supply will definitely differ. Okay. So in the first case, we need to take 43,000, and in the second case, we will take it as 38,000, depending upon the assumption that we will take. So now, sir, generally which we need to take? If question is silent, follow view 1. If question is silent, okay, follow view 1. So this is supported by ICI, suggested and RTP. ICI suggested and RTPs. So they have taken view 1 only every time. So whenever the question is silent, it is considered as price after considering subsidy, which means that subsidy is already deducted from the given price. Okay, if it is to be deducted, already it is deducted, leave it. If it is to be included in the given price, it is excluded, so you need to add. Okay. Suppose if any other view, suppose if the question clearly says the price is without considering subsidy, then you take view 2. So this is the only simple point where you generally get confused. So have clarity into this so that you will never get confused with respect to this. So that is about subsidy point. So 15 subsection 1 we completed, 15 subsection 2 we completed, 5 inclusions. And now there is one circular related to this, that is usually this airline operators will be collecting from the passenger called as PSF and UDF, passenger service fee and user development fee. For example, Indigo Airlines, when you book a ticket, they will be collecting something called as PSF and UDF from the passenger along with the ticket price, and they will be remitting it to the airport operator. So this PSF and UDF are the levies for providing the services to the passenger by the airport. But airport cannot directly collect, so they will be collecting through the airline operator. So whatever money that is being collected by the airline operator will be given to the airport operator. So therefore, to that extent, so they are acting as a pure agent. Who is acting as a pure agent? Airline operator. For example, Indigo Airlines is acting as a pure agent, and they are not required to pay any GST on that PSF and UDF, but they are required to pay GST on the other amounts which are collected from the passenger. Now, this PSF and UDF, they get some commission for collecting and remitting, some collection charges they will get. On that collection charges, airline operators, for example, Indigo Airlines, they need to pay GST. So that is this note. Passenger service fee and user development fee collected by airline operators from passengers are to be remitted to the airport operator and falls under expenditure incurred as a pure agent. Now we are moving on to the exclusions from the value. So 15.1 meaning, 15.2 inclusions and 15.3 exclusions. So in these exclusions, we have mainly discount. So discount can be segregated into 3. Discount given before or at the time of supply. Example, trade discount. Discount given after supply, but the terms are already agreed before or at the time of supply. Cash discount. Discount given after supply and the terms and conditions are not agreed before at the time of supply. Example, end of season sale discount. In case of end of season sale discount, depending upon the non-moving stock, they will be giving the discount. So therefore, it is not agreed at the time or before supply, and the discount is given after supply. Now, first discount, that is discount given before at the time of supply, is allowed as a deduction. So because at the time of supply itself, we know that, so we will be reducing the discount. But very important condition, it should be duly recorded in the invoice, which means that in the invoice it should be shown value 10,000, discount 2,000, 8,000 rupees. Then we need to pay GST only on 8,000 rupees. That is the first point. Next, second one, discount given after supply, but the invoice is already raised. When the invoice is already raised, in this case, when the discount is given later, you can give a credit note. So by giving credit note, what will happen? Our liability will come down. If we are supplier, we are giving a discount at a later point of time. Our liability will come down as and when we give credit note, and the recipient has to reverse the ITC. So that is in case of credit note. Okay, again I am repeating. So whenever the credit note is given, the supplier giving the credit note to the recipient, supplier liability will come down and recipient ITC will be reversed. Recipient will reverse the ITC. Okay. So because this discount is allowed as a deduction, but directly we cannot deduct it in the invoice, so therefore we have the credit note option. And then we have something called as discount given after supply but not agreed at the time or before supply, so it will never be excluded, which means we cannot give a credit note in this case. Credit note cannot be issued in this case, which means that, say for example, we gave a 50% discount, we collected only 50%, but we are required to pay GST on 100%. Already we paid at the time of supply itself, so we cannot give a credit note and our liability will not come down. So literally it is like, even though 50 rupees is received, I am paying GST for 100 rupees. So this is about exclusions from the value, 15 subsection 3. Then, so whether GST is applicable on the additional or penal interest on the overdue loan. So whether such penal interest would be exempted under entry 27. Now listen, interest will come into two places in GST, concentrate. Interest will come in two places in GST. Interest on loans, advances, deposits. Interest for delay in payment of consideration. There are two places where we get interest. Interest on loans, advance and deposits. Interest for delay in payment of consideration. Interest on loans, advance and deposits is exempted, whereas interest on account of delay in payment of consideration is included in the value, means it is taxable. Okay. So interest on financing activity, purely financing activity, exempted. Interest for delay in payment of consideration, taxable. Now, whenever a hire purchase transaction, in a hire purchase transaction, the hire vendor will be giving to the hire purchaser, so finance facility. So the supplier giving the finance facility to the recipient. Now the recipient will pay in installments. In every installment there is an interest component. That interest component will be taxable. Okay. And whether if any penal interest is collected, if one installment is not paid, some penal interest will be collected for non-payment of an installment. That penal interest is also taxable. In which case, when supplier himself give the financing facility. Suppose if it is a hire purchase financing, so what will happen? Supplier will not give the financing facility. Supplier will have one third party financier. That third party financier will give finance to the buyer by making the payment to the supplier. So supplier is relieved. So supplier will sell the goods, he get the money. He will pay GST only on whatever money that he receives. But that financier will be getting some interest. That interest received by the financier is exempted under GST. So this is some point which you need to remember. So maybe it can be tested in May 21 exam, because it is so far not yet asked. So what is that we need to understand? So whenever supplier himself give the financing facility, that interest whatever is collected in the installment. For example, you take, say, one car worth rupees 4 lakh rupees is given. Okay, a car of 4 lakh rupees is given on finance. A car of 4 lakh rupees is given on finance. When a car of 4 lakh rupees is given on finance, so the EMI is collected. In every EMI, who is giving the finance? Supplier only is giving the finance. Now EMI is collected. Say the EMI is somewhere 20,000 rupees per month. In that 20,000 there is principal component and interest component. So entire 4 lakhs will be taxable at the time of sale itself. Whereas that interest component is there, na? So that will be received on a monthly basis. So this month interest taxable this month, next month interest taxable next month. Why? Because interest is taxable on receipt basis. Wherever interest is taxable, that is taxable on receipt basis. So we have an advantage. Section 12 subsection 6 and 13 subsection 6 of the CGST Act, the time of supply in case of interest is on receipt basis, not on accrual basis. So I am giving a loan of 4 lakhs. So first 4 lakhs I will pay GST. Now I am receiving installment 20,000 rupees per month. In that 20,000 there is principal and interest. Already principal component I paid tax. Interest component I will pay tax in every month when I am receiving, but I have to pay tax. And at what rate I need to pay tax? At the rate applicable to the car. If the car is at 28%, on this interest also I will be paying at 28%. Now one installment is not paid, 120,000 installment not paid. I am collecting 1,500 rupees. On that 1,500 rupees again I need to pay GST. Okay, penal interest I need to pay GST. Now let's modify this. What is the risk that I have in hire purchase transaction? What if that person is not making payment to me? So due to that reason, what I am doing, I am asking, one financier, say Bajaj Finance. So this Bajaj Finance gives the finance. I get my money 4 lakhs, I will pay GST on 4 lakhs, Tata bye bye, happily I will go. Whereas that Bajaj Finance will be collecting the EMIs, 20,000 rupees monthly they will be collecting. In that 20,000 rupees, there is a principal portion and there is an interest portion. On principal portion, Bajaj Finance will not pay any GST because it is transaction in money. So they will not pay any GST. But on the interest component, that will be treated as supply of service because that is an additional consideration, but that interest is exempted. So therefore, what is advisable? Rather than taking loan from the supplier himself, it is advisable to go for financier. So hire purchase transaction involves cost, because interest on that we need to pay GST, but in case of hire purchase financing, on interest we don't have to pay any GST. Now, in case of hire purchase financing, say to Bajaj Finance, if you are not paying 20,000 rupees EMI, so Bajaj Finance will be collecting some penal interest from you. That penal interest is also exempted. So that is this issue and the clarification. Okay. So this is that issue related to that option 1, option 2. So there are two transaction options involving EMI that are prevalent in the trade. In view of the provisions of law discussed above, these two options along with GST applicability are as follows. Hire purchase transaction. What happens in hire purchase transaction? Supplier collects a consideration in installments, where such installment covers price of the goods plus interest towards time value of money. This interest is included in the value, and even penal interest for delay in payment of installment is also included in value chargeable to GST. Option 2, hire purchase financing. Supplier finances the product and collects principal and interest as EMI or installments, and interest involved in such financing transaction is exempted. Also, penal interest for delay in repayment of a loan or installment is also exempted. Okay, so this concept, definitely I am expecting a question on this for this forthcoming May 21 exam, because not asked in the past. So this is about 15 subsection 1, 15 subsection 2 and 15 subsection 3. Okay. So second option, simple here, hire purchase financing. So I told you that there is a third party financier, say Bajaj Finance. Bajaj Finance is giving you the loan and they are recovering the loan along with interest. So loan is excluded from supply, interest is exempted in their hands. Now as a person, owner, vendor, I got my money from the Bajaj Finance, I will pay GST on the value of the car. I am not getting any interest income. Okay, that is the second option. Now in the second option, if you are not repaying an installment, so that Bajaj Finance will be getting some penal interest. They will be recovering from penal interest from you. So that penal interest is also exempted. Okay. Now look into this next one. See, we completed section 15 subsection 1, 15 subsection 2 and 15 subsection 3. Along with that, this issue. Rule 33 we completed, pure agent. Rule 34 we are discussing. Rule 34 is relevant date for determination of exchange rate. Whenever the invoice is in foreign currency, either export invoice or import invoice is denominated in foreign currency, we need to pay GST on Indian rupees. So when we need to pay GST in Indian rupees, the foreign currency denominated invoices needs to be converted into Indian rupees. How can we convert the foreign currency denominated invoices into Indian rupees? For that we need to take an exchange rate. If it is goods, take the CBIC notified exchange rate. If it is services, take the GAAP rate, generally accepted accounting principles rate. What is the generally accepted accounting principle rate? Average of the buying rate and selling rate we should take. So in a particular day when the transaction happens, whatever is the buying rate and selling rate we should take on that particular day, average, that will be the GAAP rate. Whereas in case of goods, you need to take CBIC notified rate for goods. And on which date we need to take this exchange rate? Time of supply for the transaction. For every transaction, we need to determine the time of supply. So time of supply for the transaction, we need to identify on the date of the time of supply. CBIC notified rate you need to take for goods, and GAAP notified rate, GAAP rate we need to take for services. Now, when you recognize the transaction at this rate and pay GST, but the actual realization could be more or less, you may get a foreign exchange gain or foreign exchange loss. In case of foreign exchange gain, whether you need to pay any amount? No need to pay any amount in case of foreign exchange gain. And even in case of foreign exchange loss, you will not be given any amount as a refund. Okay, whatever you pay, that's it. So ignore any gain or loss. Okay, so GAAP rate is what? Usually GAAP rate is average of buying and selling rate. GAAP rate is average of buying and selling rate. Average of buying and selling rate should be taken. So note exchange gain or loss shall be ignored for the purpose of GST. Now we are moving on to 15 subsection 4. What is that 15 subsection 4? Whenever price is not sole consideration, buyer and seller are related. In that case, 15 subsection 1 transaction value not applicable. Then the value shall be determined in terms of CGST rules. Same way 15 subsection 5, last subsection. 15 subsection 5 says that whenever there is a supply for which the value is notified, we need to go by that value only. That is 15 subsection 5. So now, where is it notified? It is notified in the rules. Whatever is the value notified for a particular transaction, you need to go by that value only. So that is 15 subsection 5 says. 15 subsection 4 says when transaction value is not applicable, then also go and refer in the rules. So now we are entering into CGST rules related to valuation. 15 is over. Now in that 15, as the information is referred to rules, in that rules we start with rule 27. So rule 27 to rule 35 deals with valuation related rules in CGST. Rule 27, all these rules are of CGST rules. Rule 27 says, first condition is what? Price must be the sole consideration. If price is not sole consideration, then it will come under rule 27. That is rule 27. Price is not sole consideration. What does it mean? Which means that there is some other consideration apart from price that can be partly monetary, partly non-monetary, or fully non-monetary consideration. Then price is not the sole consideration. Then rule 27 we need to apply. Then rule 28. Transaction between related parties and distinct persons. So in that case also, first in case of transaction between related parties, rule 28 will come, and distinct persons also rule 28 will come. Why not section 15 subsection 1 transaction value? Because transaction value is applicable only when supplier and recipient are not related, but when they are related we will not apply transaction value, so we need to go for rule 28. But distinct persons, even though transaction value is applicable, but we will not apply transaction value, we will go for rules only, because 15 subsection 5 says that in respect of any supply which is notified, we need to go by the rules only. So therefore distinct persons we have notified under rule 28. So therefore for distinct persons, even though transaction value applicable, but we need to determine the value as per rules only. That is rule 28. Then principal agent transaction. Principal agent transaction, if there involves a consideration, we can apply transaction value. But transaction value should not be applied in case of principal agent transaction, because section 15 subsection 5 says that whenever a supply is notified, for that we need to refer to rules only. So therefore rule 29 deals with principal agent transaction. So we need to apply rule 29. So 27 supply, that is when price is not sole consideration. 28 related parties including distinct persons. 29 principal agent transaction. So in case of rule 27, what is that we need to do? Very simple, sir. The first priority is take open market value. If open market value not available, take money received plus money value of additional consideration. If that is also not available, take like, kind and quality. If that is also not available, take cost plus 10%. For example, a new mobile is launched. That mobile is like foldable mobile. So it will be like a mobile, and if you open it, it will become a tab. So this is a new mobile that has been launched. I am the seller of that mobile. Now you gave me your old mobile and you purchased this mobile. So now in this case, price is not sole consideration. Why? Because I am not only receiving money from you, but I am also receiving a old mobile from you. In that case, I need to take open market value. What is the meaning of open market value? On the same day, that is at the same time, on the same day, I need to see what is the price at which this is sold by me to any other unrelated buyer or any other person to an unrelated buyer. That is the open market value. It is not the MRP of the product. MRP of the product will not be taken as open market value, but it is the price at which, transaction value at which goods are sold on the same date. That is very important, on the same date by a supplier to an unrelated buyer, either the same supplier or some other supplier to an unrelated buyer. That should be taken. For example, on the same day morning, I sold it without exchange for rupees 80,000 rupees. Then 80,000 rupees will be taken as the value here, even though when it involves exchange. Suppose on that day I did not sell, no other dealer whom I know got sold. So open market value not ascertainable. In that case, I will be taking how much money you gave. You gave me 40,000 rupees plus value of your old mobile. Say value of your old mobile is say 50,000, 40 plus 50, 90,000 will be taken as the value of the new mobile. Okay, here we are valuing the old mobile, but valuing the old mobile may not be possible. So because of some reasons. So when value of old mobile cannot be done, then we will be taking like, kind and quality. Means need not be same day, but some nearest date. So this type of mobile I would have sold. So foldable only, but not this brand, some other brand having the same or similar features. So I will be selling. So that I can take. So in case of like, kind and quality, need not be exactly same. Minor modifications are permissible and need not be same time. Some nearest time will be taken. So some nearest value is there that I can take, that is like, kind and quality. Say, so day before yesterday I sold that product for rupees 85,000, that 85,000 will be taken as the value. Suppose if like, kind and quality is also not there, then in that case I need to go for cost plus 10%. What is my purchase cost? I need to take my purchase cost, my purchase price. So if it is manufacturer, take cost of production. If it is trader, take cost of purchase. If it is service provider, take cost of providing the service. Add 10%. Assumption is that 10% is my markup. So whatever is my purchase price, add 10%, that will be taken as my sale price. That is cost plus 10%, that is given in rule 30. Rule 30. Cost plus 10% information is given in rule 30. 27. Price is not sole consideration. 28, related parties, distinct persons. 29, principal agent transaction. Rule 30, cost plus 10%. So in 27, when all options fail, we will go to rule 30, cost plus 10%. Rule 31 is residual value, wherein you can declare value on some basis. If officer is satisfied, he will accept that value. Otherwise, he will reject and determine the value. That is rule 31. Okay. So 27 not possible. 30, 31. 28 not possible. 30, 31. 29 not possible. 30, 31. So 30, 31 will be common for all these three situations. Okay. So rule 30 is what? Cost plus 10%. Manufacturer take cost of production, trader take cost of acquisition, and service provider take cost of providing the service. Add 10%. Okay. 10% we need to add to that. Then sir, in case of 28, so from these four options, it comes down to three options. So that money received plus money value of additional consideration is gone. Open market value, like, kind and quality, cost plus 10%. Open market value, like, kind and quality, cost plus 10%. So from 4, it came to 3. So what are those three? Money received plus money value of additional consideration is gone. First open market value. If not, like, kind and quality. If not, cost plus 10%. Now for this open market value, they gave a relaxation. What is that relaxation? If recipient is eligible for full ITC. When recipient is eligible for full ITC, for example, I am making sale to a distinct person. I am making sale to a related person. That related person subsequently uses this product or this service. So this product for the purpose of making taxable supplies, not exempted supplies, means recipient is eligible for full ITC with respect to this. When recipient is eligible for full ITC with respect to it, then in that case, we will be taking, transaction value itself as the open market value. So open market value deemed to be transaction value when recipient is eligible for full ITC. 100% ITC means on this inward supply they can take full credit. That is the meaning of that. If recipient is not eligible for full ITC, then open market value itself will be taken as the value. And second option, like, kind and quality. Third option, cost plus 10%. Alternatively, we can ignore this completely. And go for resale price into 90%. Means the price at which that unrelated buyer subsequently sell. But this option is only for goods. This option is only for goods, not for services. This alternative is only for goods, not for services. Okay. So therefore, the price at which, for example, I am selling goods to a distinct person. I am selling goods to a related person. That distinct person or that related person subsequently sells to an unrelated buyer. Say, take that resale price, multiply with 90%. So assuming that his subsequent sale has a margin of 10%, take out the 10%. So into 90% will be taken as my value. So that can also be taken alternatively by ignoring OMV, LKQ and cost plus 10%. And now in this place you need to take one thing. What is that? So that is, if same goods are sold, not processed goods. So then you cannot take this option, which means that I am selling goods to a related person. That related person processes it and subsequently sells. Means same goods are not sold. So how can you say 90% only will be the value? He is adding some processing cost. So therefore the processing cost cannot be ascertained. So therefore the related person or distinct person subsequently should be selling the goods as such in the same way, but should not be sold after processing. Okay. So that is this. Should not have processed those goods. Recipient should not process those goods but should have been sold as such. This is about rule 28. Then rule 29, principal agent transaction. In case of principal agent transaction, what we will do? Simple. So from that 3, it came down to 2. So first to 4, OMV, money received plus money value of additional consideration, LKQ, cost plus 10%, that came down to 3. That is OMV, LKQ, cost plus 10%, that came down to 2. OMV, cost plus 10%, very simple. OMV, cost plus 10%. OMV first priority, otherwise cost plus 10%. For that OMV, we have a comparative. What is that? Or either OMV or 90% of resale price. Already we discussed 90% of resale price in the previous case, either this or that. OMV or 90% of resale price. Sir, with respect to each invoice, can I choose? Yes, you can choose. So for one invoice OMV, another invoice that 90% of resale price. Yes, you can choose. This is not like once you opted, it will be applicable for all transactions throughout the year. Not applicable like that in this case. Okay. Now, cost plus 10% is the last resort. If that is also failed, then residual value rule 31, wherein you will declare a value and on some basis, and the officer, if satisfied, he will agree, otherwise he will reject the value and he will specify the value. Now, in case when recipient is eligible for full ITC, one point we have open market value deemed to be transaction value. How much ever we invoice, that will be taken as a open market value. But can we invoice for 1 rupee also? Yes, we can invoice for 1 rupee also. That will also be taken as open market value. And sir, in case of services, we can skip rule 30 and we can go to rule 31 because determining cost of providing service is very, very difficult. Okay. Then that is this point number 4. Sir, suppose sale to a relative where price is not sole consideration, then whether rule 27 will apply or rule 28 will apply. Prefer specific over general. So the specific point here is related party transaction 28. Suppose if price is not sole consideration 27, which is generic there, okay, whereas related person 28 is specific, so we need to prefer specific over general. Even otherwise also, so prefer which comes last in the numerical order when both are specific. That is the general interpretative rules. So 27, 28, we need to take 28 when it is possible under both 27 and 28 if both are specific. But in this example, so specific is related, so related 28 only, and the 27 one is generic. Okay. What is the difference between OMV and LKQ? Open market value comparable time should be same time, and LKQ comparable time can be same time or any other time. Okay, any nearest date. Comparable value. Open market value should be transaction value, but like, kind and quality can be value determined under rules also. Then comparable supplier, same supplier or any other supplier, that is common for both. That is common for both OMV or LKQ. Comparable goods can be same goods, it should be same goods, but LKQ minor modifications are permissible. Okay, so this is about OMV versus LKQ. So therefore, we completed rule 27 to rule 31 related to this. Now, we need to discuss about debit note and credit note because, so I told you in valuation itself, debit notes and credit notes, whenever interest is collected, a debit note is given. Whenever discount is passed on, a credit note is given. So therefore, we are now discussing the concept of this debit notes and credit notes. So when debit note will be given, recipient has to pay an amount beyond the invoice price. For example, interest. So interest, what happens? Whether interest will be there in invoice? No, interest will not be there in invoice, but we are collecting something extra than the invoice. So for that, we need to give a debit note. Who will be giving debit note by whom? So debit note will always be given by supplier to recipient. And in GST, debit note is given by supplier to recipient. But in accounting, we have recipient giving debit note to supplier. That is irrelevant here. So what we need to discuss is the supplier giving debit note to the recipient is only relevant. Supplier giving debit note to recipient is only relevant. So debit notes and credit notes in GST will be given by whom to whom? Supplier to recipient, supplier to recipient, supplier to recipient. Okay. So debit note and credit note will be given by supplier to recipient. And when debit note will be given, so recipient shows what balance in the supplier books? Debit balance. If the debit balance increases, debit note. If the debit balance decreases, credit note. Okay. So interest, extra amount collected, so debit balance will increase, so debit note, and discount given, so the debit balance will come down, so credit note. Okay, so when debit balance increases, debit note. When the debit balance decreases, credit note. It will be given by supplier to recipient only. Supplier to recipient only. Done. So just because I am telling fast, don't think that I am going fast. It is like same point I am repeating multiple times. And then what is the time limit? There is no time limit for issuing debit note, because debit note leads to additional income to the government. So therefore there is no time limit. You can issue it any time. After 10 years, 20 years, 100 years also you can issue. But credit note should be issued within a time limit, because credit note leads to reduction in tax liability for the supplier. Reduction in tax liability for the supplier. So it should be given within a time. What is that time? Very, very important. 30th September of the succeeding financial year, or date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. 30th September of the succeeding financial year, date of filing annual return, not due date of filing annual return, date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. By that time, if you give credit note, then only you can report it in GSTR1 and your liability will come down. Thereafter, can't I issue credit note? I can issue, but that cannot be reported in GSTR1. So due to that reason, my liability will not be reduced. Now, what is the consequences of giving debit note by the supplier? So, whenever debit note is issued, the supplier's liability will increase. And where it should be reported? Supplier should report it in GSTR1, consequently should pay tax as per 3B. Then what will be the consequence to the recipient when debit note is issued? When debit note is issued, recipient's input tax credit balance needs to be reversed. So, therefore, in 3B, he need to do ITC reversal. If there is balance in ITC, it will get reduced from the balance in ITC. If there is no balance in ITC, the liability will increase to the recipient. Okay. Then next thing, credit note. What is the advantage to the supplier? Supplier's liability will come down. How supplier's liability will come down? He need to report in GSTR1. Automatically in GSTR3B, the liability for that month will get reduced. That month will have some liability na. So that month liability will automatically get reduced because of giving the credit note. And what will happen to the recipient here? Sorry, I just made a mistake. So, in case of debit note, the recipient will be not reversing ITC, will be availing ITC. In case of credit note, only recipient will reverse the ITC. In case of debit note, recipient will avail the ITC, because it is like new tax paid, so he will take. In case of credit note, recipient will reverse the ITC. Okay. So, availment of ITC and reversal of ITC is possible only through GSTR 3B that they will do. That is this debit note and credit note. Now, we are moving on to a special rule, that is rule 32. Rule 32. So, this is an option to transaction value. Either you can go for transaction value or you can follow this special valuation methodology. It's up to you. If you want to follow transaction value, you can follow. If you find like transaction value is difficult, you can follow this. In case of 5 transactions alone, this rule 32 will be applicable only for 5 transactions. What are those 5 transactions? Number 1, foreign exchange transactions, 32 sub rule 2. And next, air travel agent, 32 sub rule 3. Life insurance business, 32 sub rule 4. And then second hand dealer in goods, 32 sub rule 5. And then vouchers, 32 sub rule 6. These 5 cases, that is forex transactions, then life insurance air travel agent, life insurance business, second hand dealer in goods, and vouchers. So in this case only rule 32 will be applicable. So what is this rule 32? Rule 32 is a option to the transaction value. Either you can follow transaction value or you can follow this rule 32. If it is foreign exchange transaction, we have 2 options. Option 1, when one of the currency exchange involves Indian rupee and the RBI reference rate is available for that currency. So take the buying rate or selling rate and the RBI reference rate into units of the currency. For example, if take, so rupee per dollar equals to 63.68. So then in that case, so either bid or ask depending upon the transaction. Say X Limited sold $10,000, okay, and RBI reference rate is rupees 65 per dollar. Now in this case, what we need to do, when X Limited is selling dollars, what bank is doing? Bank is buying dollars, so we need to take bid rate 63 as the rate and RBI reference rate is 65. So the difference, positive or negative, you ignore it. Difference you need to take into units of currency, 10,000 rupees, that is equals to 2 into 10,000, 20,000 rupees will be taken as the value. So when one of the currency exchange involves Indian rupee and RBI reference rate is available on that day, we need to take buying rate or selling rate minus RBI reference rate into units of currency. Ignore the positive or negative, you need to take the difference, okay? So this will be taken as a value. If RBI reference rate not available, if RBI reference rate not available, then what we need to do? If RBI reference rate not available, what is that we need to do? So in that case, we need to take gross amount exchange in Indian rupees multiply with 10%. So what should be taken as the value? Gross amount in Indian rupees. So $10,000 at what rate we have exchanged? 63 rupees we have exchanged. At what rate we have exchanged? 63 rupees we have exchanged. So 10,000 into 63 into 1%. So that will be taken. So 10,000 into 63 is 6,30,000. 6,30,000 into 10%, 6,300 will be taken as the value. Understood? So when one of the currency exchange involves Indian rupee, so buying rate or selling rate and the RBI reference rate, its difference into units of currency. When RBI reference rate is not available, so that is gross amount exchange in rupees into 1% should be taken. And suppose if both the currencies exchanged are foreign currencies, say for example, I know we have dollar per pound. Dollar per pound, so is 0.6 and 0.63. Dollar per pound 0.6 and 0.63. Say 10,000 pounds converted to $6,000. 10,000 pounds converted to $6,000. So in this case, what we need to do? So convert both the currencies into Indian rupees using RBI reference rate. Say we have rupee per pound somewhere 105 and rupee per dollar 80. So convert both into Indian rupees and multiply with 1%. Multiply with 1%. Whichever is lower will be taken. So purchased currency converted into Indian rupees using RBI reference rate. Sold currency converted into Indian rupees using RBI reference rate. Whichever is lower, converted into Indian rupees into 1%, whichever is lower should be taken as the value. Okay. So now when this is not possible, when this option is not possible, so in case when RBI reference rate is not available, in case this RBI reference rate is not available, this option is not possible. That is about option 1 in rule 32. In rule 32 itself we have two options. So transaction value is one option. Apart from that, so in rule 32 itself we have two options. In that first option we have completed. Now the second option is a slab rate model. What is this slab rate model? Suppose if the gross amount exchange in Indian rupees is up to 1 lakh. Then in that case we need to take, so 1% of the gross amount or 250 rupees, whichever is higher. For example, if you take 80,000 rupees, 80,000 into 1%, 800 or 250, whichever is higher, 800 will be taken. Exactly 1 lakh. 1 lakh means 1 lakh into 1%, 1,000. 1,000 or 250, whichever is higher, we will be taking 1,000 rupees. So when you are in the second slab, 1,000 rupees will be the fixed amount. So it's like a slab rate model, income tax slab rate model only. So 1,000 rupees will be the fixed amount. On whatever is the excess amount beyond 1 lakh, on that we will take 0.5%, half of the original slab. So original slab 1, half of that is 0.5 and 10% of that is 10% of the original is 0.1. Remember 3 slabs, 3 rates, 1, 0.5 and 0.1. It's not 0.5 per 0.5, it's 0.5%. So 1%, 0.5% and 0.1%. 1%, 0.5% and 0.1%. Okay, so first slab 1% and second slab, for example, if it is 4 lakhs. 4 lakhs means what we need to do? First for 1 lakh it is 1,000. Remaining 3 lakhs. On 3 lakhs 0.5%. 3 lakhs into 0.5% will be 1,500. So 1,500 plus that 1,000. So therefore 2,500 like that. For example, if it is 9 lakhs, what we need to do? 9 lakhs. So take out 1 lakh. Take out 1 lakh. So 8 lakhs. So 8 lakhs into 0.5%, 4,000. So 4,000 plus 1,000, 5,000. So 5,000 will be the value. And then not GST payable. 5,000 is the value. Got it? And then exactly 10 lakhs here. Exactly 10 lakhs. Take out 1 lakh. For 1 lakh it is 1,000. First slab. And remaining 9 lakhs. 9 lakhs into 0.5%. 9 lakhs into 0.5% is what? 4,500. 4,500 plus 1,000. 5,500. So you are in the third slab. Now third slab fixed amount is what? 5,500. After crossing 10 lakhs on that extra amount 0.1% subject to maximum 60,000 rupees. For example, if it is 50 lakhs, so take out 10 lakhs. So 10 lakhs 5,500, 40 lakhs. 40 lakhs into 0.1% will be 4,000. 40 lakhs into 0.1% will be 4,000. So 4,000 plus 5,500, 9,500. Like that. Suppose if it is 500 lakhs, 500 lakhs take out 10 lakhs. So 490 lakhs, 490 lakhs into 0.1%, 49,000. 49,000 plus 5,500, that is 54,500. So maximum is 60,000 rupees. Okay. So this is how we need to calculate option 2. That is rule 32 sub rule 2B. Rule 32 sub rule 2B. Option 2. Option 1 is rule 32 sub rule 2A. Option 2 is rule 32 sub rule 2B. Then, so these are the two options. Sir, which option I should choose, sir? I should choose any one out of these two at the beginning of the financial year. Sir, transaction value and rule 32? Transaction value and rule 32 between each invoice. Transaction value and rule 32 between each invoice. In rule 32 itself, we have option in the beginning of the financial year we need to choose. Sir, whether option 1 shall we choose, which is advantageous for each transaction? No. So option 1 opted will be applicable for all transactions during the financial year. Shall be applicable throughout the financial year, you need to decide. But transaction value and rule 32 we can choose. We can choose. This invoice transaction value, this invoice rule 32 we can choose. And then rule 32 sub rule 3, air travel agent services. In case of air travel agent services, within option 1 itself, RBI rate or gross amount. When RBI reference rate is available, we need to go for, when RBI reference rate is available, we need to go for, that only. When RBI reference rate is available, we need to go by that way only. That is buying rate or selling rate minus RBI reference rate into 1%. When RBI reference rate is, buying rate or selling rate minus RBI reference rate into units of currency. When RBI reference rate is not available, then only we need to take into 1%. Okay. So within that you cannot choose. In case of air travel agent will get lots of commissions here. So then what should be taken as the value? So we need to take first what type of ticket that air travel agent is booking. Is it domestic booking or international booking? We need to see. If it is a domestic booking, so we need to take whatever is the base fare in the domestic booking into 5% will be taken as the value. If it is international booking, double, that is 10%. This was asked in November 2020 exam. I don't think so that it will be asked again for May 21 exam. And then we have something called as life insurance business. So air travel agent, simple. So take the ticket fare. In the ticket fare, there is a basic fare. On that basic fare into 5% is the value. If it is domestic bookings, if it is international bookings, basic fare into 10% will be taken as the value. Okay. This is in case of air travel agent. Now life insurance business, not life insurance agent. For life insurance business, what we need to do? So we need to see whether it is a risk cover policy or not. If it is a risk cover policy, what is a risk cover policy? Term insurance, we pay the premium which do not commensurate with the value of the policy. We pay premium for the life coverage. If nothing happens, we will not be getting anything refund. If anything happens, we will get the amount. In that case, entire premium collected is income to the insurance company. Therefore, the insurance company has to pay GST on the entire value. There is no reduction that is applicable. So normal transaction value only. Suppose if it is other than risk cover policy, if it is a reinvestment policy means what? Amount allocated for investment. So whatever money that they will be collecting from us, so a percentage of that amount will be allocated for investment and remaining amount go into their pocket. How much they will allocate for investment, they should communicate to us. In that case, the difference amount whatever they keep in their pocket, on that GST is payable by them. So gross amount collected minus amount allocated for investment communicated to the policyholder at the time of collection, that will be taken as a value. Suppose if it is single premium annuity policy means that, so there will be only single premium that will be collected and they will reinvest it and they will take the insurance premium out of it. So therefore only one premium will be paid by the person. So on that premium 10% will be taken as the value because all these amounts will be returned due to that reason. Then in that in the normal policies, normal money back policies, normal other life insurance policies, if it is first year premium, only 25% will be taken as value. And renewal premium means what? Already they took the policy and they will continue to pay from next year onwards. So on that renewal premium, half, that is 12.5%. First year premium 25%, renewal premium 12.5% will be taken as the value. Done. So this is in case of rule 32 sub rule 4. Then rule 32 sub rule 5, buying and selling of second hand goods. In case of purchase and sale of second hand goods, we need to take margin scheme. What is margin scheme? Take the sale price minus purchase price. Whatever is the sale price minus the purchase price already paid, so that difference only will be taken as value on which GST payable. Otherwise, what will happen? Say I am a second hand dealer in goods, second hand dealer in car. I purchase a old car, do some refurbishing and sell it as a car, used car. My purchase also used, my sales also used, but I do some refurbishing process. Now in that case, on the sale value of the car only I need to pay. Say my purchase is at 1 lakh and my sale is at 1 lakh 50. I need to pay GST on 1 lakh 50,000. Is it clear? And now that is too much. I'm passing on too much tax to my customer. So now under this margin scheme, I need to pay GST only on the difference. What is the difference? 50,000 only. On the 50,000 only I will be paying GST. Very, very important condition is that on my purchase, I should not have paid GST. And even if I have paid GST, I should not have taken the credit. So that is in case of margin scheme condition. So value equals to selling price minus purchase price. ITC should not be availed on purchase. In case of repossession, what is repossession? Say there is a financier. That financier has financed a car and now the installment is not paid. The financier will repossess the car. When he repossesses the car, he will sell that repossessed car at a later point of time. So now he will also be eligible to get the margin scheme because he is purchasing, like he is not purchasing, but the used car only he is selling. So he is also eligible for margin scheme. Now sale price is the sale price of the repossessed car, but purchase price he did not purchase. So what should be taken as a purchase price? Original purchase price, that is the defaulting borrower would have purchased, na? So that original purchase price as reduced by 5% for every quarter or part thereof. So we need to give the depreciation based on 5% for every quarter or part thereof. So how many quarters from when to when? From the date he purchased, from the date we financed for the purchase till the time we disposed of the repossessed car. So for that number of quarters or part thereof, here we need to take 3 months as 1 quarter. Wrong. So Jan, Feb, March should be taken as 1 quarter, not date to date. Date to 3 months should not be taken as quarter. So 3 months, which is like calendar quarter, we should take Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Even if part of the quarter, you need to take it as full quarter and multiply with 5%. Okay. So original purchase price minus 5% for every quarter or part thereof from the date of purchase till the date of disposal of such repossessed asset. In case of coupons or vouchers, so money value of supplies redeemable against such coupon or voucher should be taken. For example, you got a Domino's voucher and for the Domino's voucher, you can eat 1 medium pizza and 1 chocolava cake and 1 Coke. So then, or Pepsi. So now what will be taken as the value of that voucher? The value of voucher equals to value of 1 medium pizza plus value of chocolava cake plus value of the Coke. That will be taken as the value of the voucher. Even though you are not redeeming it fully, but you are eating only pizza, then also the value of the voucher will not change because the value of voucher is not the value at which it is redeemed. The value of goods against which it is redeemable should be taken as the value of the voucher. This is mainly applicable in case of identifiable voucher, not in case of non-identifiable voucher. Then in case of notified services between distinct persons. So right now there are no notified services. So therefore rule 32 sub rule 7 is not practically applicable. So because services are not notified for this purpose. So then for notified service, they are telling that to between distinct persons, they are telling that we will be taking value as nil. But right now this is not applicable because there are no services that are notified for this purpose. So therefore in rule 32 we have only sub rule 6, rule 32 sub rule 2 forex transactions, 32 sub rule 3 so life air travel agent, 32 sub rule 4 life insurance business, 32 sub rule 5 second hand dealer in goods. So second hand dealer in goods, very important point, purchase should also be used, sales also should be used. Purchase is new, sale is used, that will not come under second hand goods. And then rule 32 sub rule 6 vouchers, coupons, etc. Okay, what coupons? Now identifiable vouchers means a product is mentioned, price is not mentioned on that voucher. Now we have something called as rule 31A. So 27, 28, 27 price is not sole consideration, 28 we are taking related party transaction, distinct persons, 29 principal agent transaction, 30 we are taking cost plus 10%, 31 we are taking residual value. And 31A we are discussing now. 32 is that special valuation methodology for the transactions. In that, so one question is asked by one of our friend, that is, sir, what will be the margin if it is negative? So simple, no GST payable. Suppose if the sale price is less than the purchase price, negative, you are not required to pay GST. So sale value is 1 lakh and the purchase price is 1,20,000. So negative value addition, I am not required to pay any GST on that. Okay. And so rule 32, then rule 33 pure agent, rule 34 exchange rate. Okay, so now rule 31A, in case of lottery, betting and gambling transactions. So in case of lottery, betting, gambling, only these three are covered under supply. All other actionable claims are excluded from supplying. In case of lottery, very simple. See what is the face value printed on the lottery ticket or the price notified by the state government. Whichever is higher should be taken. Face value, for example, face value 5,000 and price notified by the state government is 5,500. So we need to take 5,500 into 100 by 128, means that 5,500 should be assumed as inclusive of GST. So GST rate is 28%. If you take out the GST 28%, so the baki amount is towards the value. Okay, and then suppose if it is betting or gambling transaction. Lottery, we had two types of lottery previously, but now there is only one lottery. Okay, so let it be run by state government or let it be run by other person. So always the rate will be 28% only. Face value printed or the price notified by the state government, whichever is higher, into 100 by 128, because the rate of GST is 28%. And then betting and gambling transactions, we need to take, in case of betting and gambling transaction, the total bet value should be taken as the value. For example, so I am an organizer, I am conducting a betting transaction. I collect people like money from everyone, and I will be giving the money to only those who won. For example, I am conducting a betting transaction for an IPL match, and the IPL match, so there are two players, say Mumbai Indians versus Sunrisers Hyderabad. Okay, for example, now in this case, who will win the match? I will collect money from everyone. For example, Dream 11 example you take. So I will be collecting 1,000 rupees from everyone. So when I am collecting 1,000 from everyone, say 1,000 people I collected. Now out of this total amount, I will be giving money to those people who placed bet on the winning team. So now I will be distributing the prize money, but first I need to pay GST on this total bet value. I am an organizer, I need to pay GST on the total bet value, not on the commission that I get. For example, I got a total bet value 10 lakhs. On the 10 lakhs, I will pay GST, and then I will take my commission, and balance I will distribute as prize money. Okay, so that is this here. Then next, there is one point called as TCS, not included in the value. What is this TCS not included in the value? That is income tax TCS, not GST TCS, income tax TCS. So whenever, say I am a seller of four-wheeler, motor vehicle, I am selling you an SUV. So 10 lakhs is the price of the SUV. On that car, on that SUV 10 lakhs, I will be collecting, say 1% as TCS from you. So this 1% whatever I am collecting is apart from 10 lakhs. Now should I pay GST on 10 lakhs plus this 1% or only on 10 lakhs? That was a confusion. And 1% TCS which was collected will be deposited by me against your name, so that you will be taking it as income tax credit. Okay. So now this TCS whatever is collected, logically speaking, as per section 15(2)(a), all taxes, duties and cess by whatever name called should be included in the value. So therefore TCS should be included in value of 10 lakhs for calculating GST. But TCS, it is clarified by CBIC circular that TCS is not a tax. It is an interim levy, not having the characteristic of a tax. Therefore, don't include TCS while calculating the value for payment of GST. That is this circular. TCS not to be included in the value. Then next, business correspondent or business facilitators will be working for banking company, and they will be getting service charges from the customers. So they will be remitting the service charges. Sometimes directly banking company will collect, sometimes they will collect and they will remit. On that service charges, business facilitators and business correspondents will not pay GST. That bank only will pay GST. Then on what amount business correspondent, business facilitator will pay GST? On the commission what they derive. In that also some cases they will pay, some cases the bank will pay, some cases it is exempted. Okay. But on that service charges, banking company will only pay GST. So with this, we completed value of supply under GST.